Welcome
to church, folks.
Be
Again,
talking.
I was making sure my mic was up.
Yes,
Golly.
amen.
Golly.
Amen.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. Hey there, sister. Tonight we're talking about church hurt. I have been sending out stories, reels, tweets, posts to see if anyone was interested in sharing their story, or you can do that off camera. You just drinking like you getting paid for Sun Kissed. Anybody paying us?
Yes, advertising.
So,
Focus.
I've sent out a lot of just mailed information about church hurt to see if you've experienced it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take our time and go through this series and talk about church hurt
Systematically.
Right.
We're not going to rush through this episode. I believe this is
The series.
the series. We're not going to rush through it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to dissect it a little bit.
Yep.
Piece by piece. As I said, how do you eat an elephant? Piece by piece.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
And so we're talking about church hurt. Church hurt, I love a good acronym, y'all. And so I made an acronym for hurt.
We make an acronym.
Well, I was just going to let you introduce it. What is the acronym for... What is the acronym for hurt?
Help and parking recognizable traumas. How was that, baby?
Help and unpack recognizable trauma. We just introverted that.
Yeah, introverted. Right.
That's all good. It's all good.
But today we're gonna talk about, just generally talk about it. We're not going into the specific, but we just want to introduce the topic tonight
and give you an idea of what we're going to be talking
about
this series.
And
so let me start with a quote. I have a quote today, right?
All right, you have a very profound.
I have a good quote.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
And our quote today is, not everything is faced. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
Say that one more time.
I'm so glad you asked, because I feel like I need to redeem myself. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
Until you confront it.
James Baldwin. Welcome
to Church Folks Be Talking.
We're rusty.
So this is my beautiful wife, Frankie, Dr. Graham Brown. Boo boo boo. And my name is Pastor P.
Pastor P. And,
in the house.
And obviously, we're twinning today.
Yes, she took my idea.
You know, preacher stole my look.
No, that's all right. You know,
I hate the stripes today.
That's okay. The Bible said,
you know what?
We shall become one.
Let's put this together. So you'll tell me who wore best.
Okay, you can cover your chest now. I don't want you
to show my necklace. I'm feeling very Lenny Kravitz today. But this is all you're gonna get.
Well, Lenny Kravitz got shot in the movie, so.
Oh, he did. Oh, poor Lenny. What was the movie? What? Shotgun Wedding.
Shotgun Wedding.
It was cute.
I didn't like it.
You wouldn't even watching it. Nevertheless.
So we are here. We're gonna talk about church hurt.
Yes.
Help unpack. Unpack recognizable trauma.
Because that's what it is, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of that. I'm going to be flipping through my notes because I have a lot. But before we even jump into it, let's talk about what church hurt is. How is it defined? All right. And let me tell you, we looked through a lot of different articles and books and different things like that. And there's so much on the internet. I was really taken aback about how much material there is in relation to church hurt. You know how to put that down. Talking about his laptop, y'all. and so many different definitions about it, roughly the same, but there was a nuance between each of them. So I want to give the best definition I feel that suits our conversation and even makes kind of sense to what we have dealt with.
I think it's a great definition, right? To be quite honest with you. I mean, there are many definitions, but right. we found one that really resonates with us personally.
Do you have it on?
Yes, I'm read on it here. Let me read that. Yeah. Right here.
Okay, make sure we got the right one.
Right.
Okay.
And it's from this book called Healing Your Church Hurt: What to Do When You Still Love God But Have Been Wounded by His People. My God, to be wounded by God people.
That in itself.
That in itself is a lot. It's a conundrum for me, to be quite honest with you. But anyway, yeah, it would be. The author of the book name is Stephen Manfield, and this is the definition he gives here. He said, church hurt is a deeply traumatic spiritual grievance brought on when an event or series of events takes place within one house of worship, and an effect is so dramatic that while the person still has faith, his or her trust in the church has failed. Now, while the house of worship, right, the house of worship is a place of healing. It should never cause wound in someone's life. It's a place of healing. Unfortunately, we have to realize, and as a pastor, we have to realize, we are dealing with wounded people as well.
I saw, I think I read one of the articles that we were talking about, and I've probably just even seen it on the internet as far as different articles, and it says that the church is considered to be, it was compared to, or give an analogy of a hospital, because there's all wounded people in need of repair. So you can't expect perfect people to be in a place where there's hurt and people are going to seek healing.
Right. But I will say this though, all right, and the Bible tells us very plainly. Paul said, if you see a brother or sister has fallen into sin, those who are spiritual must restore one in the spirit of love. It's season. You don't go condemn that person, try to make the person feel bad in the way that he or she doesn't come back.
Yeah.
You go and you restore one in the love of God, the agape love.
Well,
so we expect those who are in the church, who are more spiritual, when we see situations like that and people being damaged in the church, in the worship, then those who are spiritual need to really go in the spirit of gentleness and speak to that person.
Well, in itself, that's the problem, because people aren't doing that, and that's why there's church hurt. That's the theory. That's in the perfect place.
Well, then
hurt people. Right.
But then I have a question. Then I think Paul really addressed it to the church of Corinthians.
Okay.
He said, if one offend you in the body, why is that there's one spiritual cannot handle the situation while taking it to the court, to the judicial system? But Paul said the reason why, because you are not spiritual. So then if someone in the church who cannot rectify that, then I beg the question, what type of church are you in? Is it the healing church? Or is it a church that constantly causing pain to those who are coming in?
I'm glad you're so optimistic.
I am.
About the faith of it. But again, I'm gonna be the antagonist of this. Church hurt really derives its relevancy because they fail to. Let me get it right. Church hurt derives its relevancy to the field of conflict resolution. The reason why church hurt is so prevalent and so widespread and rife within the churches is because people don't know how to address conflict properly.
And let's say you've done an excellent piece.
Conflict avoidance versus moving forward and being either proactive, rather they're being, instead of being proactive, they're reactive, and people believe and bring their feelings in. But that's, we can go
but one of the things that would give you credence and to talk about that because you did your research in conflict management.
Yes.
So you have tons of information that can be so relevant and conducive to the conversation.
I agree. And as we're moving forward and further in the topic, I definitely want to share my research findings because my doctorate degree, my PhD, is in conflict resolution, and a lot of it was steeped in, and my subject matter was New York City. But are you fooling with that shirt? What you trying to do? My research was steeped in. The subject matter was New York City churches. I can't even. I'm sitting here being serious. I see you messing with your top collar. Okay, right. let's go. So we discussed what church hurt is. Here's the why of it. We're discussing what it is, but the question is, why is this conversation necessary? When I put information out there on social media to see if people had experienced that, and if they either wanted to just share their stories with me, or if they even wanted to be a part of the podcast, I assumed that there would be I would have DMs going crazy. I would have people, yes, and it wasn't the nature. I got a few calls, I got a few text messages, and I'm sure there's reasons people just don't want to re-trigger their trauma, and I'm sure you can attest to this.
It's kind of re-traumatization, right?
But then and still, I know a lot of people, even who are personally close to me, that have never faced that. And to them, I say, what a blessing.
But one other thing, though, we have to admit, why?
The question is, why is it necessary?
Why is it necessary? Why is it necessary? But
church are necessary. But why is this conversation?
It's necessary, right? But as you said, you thought somebody would send feedback on it. But one of the reasons why, and I think you kind of touch on it subconsciously in the sense of in your conversation, and that is that people don't want to re-dramatize their experience again. So rather not facing it, they do not talk about it.
Again, conflict avoid.
But here's the thing about it, though. I've heard from the information that I've read, I heard some pastor said, well, it's not good to talk about it because you don't want to re-traumatize the person. Yes, that's true. I think we got to apply wisdom in the matter on how you navigate that type of conversation with that particular person.
Yeah.
But we got to choose the environment, to do that. But the other thing, though, it is a conversation that is necessary.
Why?
Because it's necessary because people need to understand that there is healing, there is restoration, and oftentimes when we stay in our pain and in our conflict, we can't receive what God really want to give us, because that pain, that's trauma, is continually hinder what God wants for you.
And if I can add to that before we move forward, it's not like they don't want to. The even more underlying layers of that is they don't know how to.
Okay. And that's fair. That's fair enough.
People who want to be healed.
Right.
People who want to speak their truth. But yet again, as I shared on last week, my conflict when we were talking about gaslighting, I was advised not to share my conflict with others, even though it was widespread.
Already.
Right. So they didn't get it firsthand. Well, I guess they did from the other side, but there's always two sides. Well, my mom said there's always three sides to a story. You're still his side, her side, and the truth. I can still see you on the camera, Pastor, as you're. Next week we're not drinking on camera, or we're gonna have straws, okay? Because this is not sexy at all.
Not say it was sexy.
The point is that they don't know how. Where do you even start? Where do you begin? And that's what we're going to discuss in our series. How to unpack it. We're going to help you figure out the healing portion. We're going to help you process it. And then we're going to talk about how to recognize it. Okay.
Right.
So it's what it is. The question is why. The traumatic element experience occurs, and this is for church hurt, when a previous place of trust, right, and spiritual and social connection becomes a place of rejection, anguish, or even disenchantment. And that could lead to questioning and or even rejecting one's church. So you're thinking to yourself, did this really happen to me? You're gaslit. This couldn't have happened. I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm not the only one. And then you start questioning the place where you go for healing, and you become disillusioned and you feel disenchanted, and then eventually you retreat.
Right. And sometimes you hear people make the I mean, I met several people. I met a gentleman one time outside the church building, and he was sharing me his experience he had.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to come back to the church. But what make it conversation so interested is that he said, I still love God, but man, I don't want to come back to the church and get hurt.
Yeah.
In other words, I mean, he wouldn't say it word for word like that, but
right.
His action and the words that he was saying was alluding to the point that he does not want to be get PTSD. Excuse me.
And
traumatic stress disorder.
With that, we align a misgiving that happened at one church, and we apply that generally to all churches across the world.
Right, and that's the thing, right?
I heard in Gary, Indiana, and now I'm in New York City, and I don't want to deal with no church people because these people are just going to be the same as the other people. And so you tend to put everybody in the same basket.
Right, and that's the lens that people are looking through.
A very narrow lens.
Very narrow lens, the lens of being hurt. Right.
So let's talk about what types of church hurt are there. There are definitely different kinds, different strokes for different folks. So, Pastor, hook us up. What type of church hurts are there?
So we have 4 types. We got the physical. Right.
We got 5, right?
You got 5?
I got 5.
You got 5? Okay. Well, if I miss one, say it. Well, physical, we got the psychological, we got emotional, and then we have the verbal.
Then we have the spiritual, right?
Oh, you know what? That's right. I meant to put that. That's 5. Spiritual. That's the main one, the spiritual.
And then we came with
verbal.
Verbal abuse.
Yes, verbal abuse.
Well, yeah.
Oh, no. This is a strong one. Verbal abuse.
Communication.
It's bad. Right, it's bad. Because sometimes people come off really abrasive, and it can be
a turn off.
It can be a turn off.
I said it our whole time during our love language series. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it.
How you say it.
And when you go into a church and somebody's supposed to be welcoming you in, you can really misrepresent what people say just based on their tone or their look or their body language, and you automatically get turned off. And the person receiving you has no idea because they didn't hear it or see it.
But here's the thing, though. If I may say this to you, my beautiful wife, is this: that sometimes it can be unintentional, because Yeah, right. No, I just want to re-emphasize.
Okay.
Because I have a tendency to just re-emphasize certain things.
You do.
The reason why I said that is, it's important to do that because people already heard already. So normally they come in with their baggage. So when somebody says certain things to them, they misinterpret that, misconstrue that, and they interpret that to be the person's being rude to them.
Right.
But really, is their emotion that was being damaged. So anything that you have to say to them, they're going to view it as being hostile. Unfortunately, that's its reality.
That's a good point. It reminds me, and gosh, we got to get into this. It reminds me, and we're not going to say names, but it reminds me of a young lady that had the same experience in church last year, summer of last year. She came in church brand new. I don't know how she found us, but she came in, and her and the usher had a little bit of miscommunication, and she was very taken aback by that, and so much so she wrote an email to the church and aired her grievance with what happened. She was very dissatisfactory with the service, so to speak. And any other instance, someone would have said, you know what, you just had a bad experience. We're not going to go back and forth with this.
I'll brush it off.
Or just brush it off.
But I heard that
I
heard that the minister kind of responded to this lady in a very professional way and Christ-like way, and I apologized to her, and and then the story that we heard is that the pastor reached out to the lady, And
we talking about the same person?
We're talking about the same person.
Is you talking about yourself in the third person?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
No, you give it up. You give it away now. But anyway, yeah, I would try to use the third person. I know, but I try to use it. Oh, Lord have mercy. But
come on.
Anyway, long story short,
but what did
what I do is that
brought it to the church.
We brought it to the church. I spoke to her, and I apologized to her. Let her know that the ushers are really professional on what they do. Mm-hmm. And if you misconstrued anything, I apologize. And I said to this individual, when you come to church, come see me and my wife, and we will welcome you, mm-hmm. right? So when she came to the church, and I was telling in the pulpit, I had knowledge of her.
He made a big thing about it.
Make her feel,
welcome back, sister. We have, and everyone was like,
yeah, welcome back.
Who is this?
But the point was she said, it's something that she said that stood with me, right? That she wanted to grow mm-hmm. in the Lord, and mm-hmm. that's what stood with me. And then sometime, I have to give God the glory for this, because I heeded the voice of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And reached out back to her. Mm-hmm. And you know something, church? This individual, she and her daughter got saved.
And you know what?
And God gave me an opportunity to baptize both of them. So it goes to show you that, you have to be in the Spirit.
Yeah.
When somebody's hurting, ask God to give you the wisdom how to navigate. Right. Because sometimes we can mm-hmm. take a situation and put something there that is not there.
I was going to say, don't be all in your feelings. Because the staff could have easily had said, you know what? We ain't worried about that. Let's move forward and not follow up.
Right.
And you didn't. And what a blessing. I'm so happy that you did what you did, because to this point today, I can't imagine a lot of what we've done in the last 6 months without this person and her daughter.
That's awesome people
to be there for us.
But it's
just like we could have lost that. We could have missed that.
We could have missed that
out on that opportunity to minister them, for them to be a blessing to us, for us to be a blessing to them. If we would have been in our feelings and we're like, she'll be all right.
Right, and that's the philosophy of our church is to make sure everybody feel welcome.
Yeah. It says, when a person, there's research that goes on churchleadership.org. When a person leaves the church or they have some type of grievance, there's only a few weeks, about 4 to 8 weeks that you have to bring them back before hurt starts to set in. And either they feel like if the hurt is too much, that the grievance hasn't been resolved, or they decide that they go to another church. And soon as Pedro got that email, was that Sunday? He got the email throughout that week. He called her literally before the next Sunday hit.
But a lead pastor could have brought it to our attention
into that
this young lady came. Right. It's when she texts me, I immediately respond back.
Right.
Because the Holy Spirit was, like I said, we just have to be very cognitive.
Yeah.
Spiritually cognitive. Yeah. Put it that way.
Because, all the things like this and a lot of church hurt can be avoided just by simple action of effort.
Yeah.
And care.
Right. And as we go to the unpacking it.
Yeah.
I know when I received mine 20 years ago. Oh my God.
Received your what?
When I received, church hurt.
Okay.
It was two individuals that really reached out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And these two individuals are very monumental to me. One of them passed on into glory, and she was my Sunday school teacher.
Right.
And I love her to death. Wonderful lady.
And I agree. I think it's all about support. I was just telling Pedro the example of the lady who had a grievance and it was resolved. All that was just because of care and sensitivity and actually reaching out to those that are hurt. And we also had a lady in church today who had been absent for almost a month or two because she hurt herself. And we gave her a little bit of time in church this afternoon to really just share her thanks and appreciation for the support and the love and the prayers and the visits of the church. And that just warmed my heart because I was thinking, well, look at that. Look at that. When people really care, how much that makes a difference in a person's recovery in healing, because that so could have went a different way.
And this was not a lady also in the church, and I gotta give God honor, give God credits too, because the lead pastor kind of brought that attention to us, because sometimes when people are hurting, they need to hear from their pastor, because you want to make sure you continue reaching out to them, as you said, when it takes like 4 to 8 weeks for people to come back to church, and we don't want that to happen.
No, 4 to 8 weeks in order to resolve the conflict before they're
gone.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So we want to make sure we're on top of it, and I give credit to the lead pastor to when he pointed that out to us, that we want to make sure that we are on top of it, that we are caring for those who are going through hurt, the loss of a loved one. Because sometimes when you don't hear from people as much, because you kind of think that people you do forget about you. Right, it's not about community.
And I want to know that people care. I've expressed that millions of times. When I was going through my dark season, there were people that I wanted to really reach out and really to come in and check on me, and they didn't. And some of it was because maybe they just didn't know, but a lot of it was maybe because I didn't share. I thought I shared, but apparently not enough to say. But again, I'm a needy friend, so I want you to make a fuss over me, especially when I'm in a hurting season.
Basically, that's one thing with my wife, because she tends to close in sometimes, and I'm trying to get her to.
I want to tell you that I want you to pay attention to me when I'm hurting. I just want you to know. You should know. Like, if your friend is hurt,
but I do know.
I shouldn't have to say.
I do know, but she doesn't want to talk about it, which is understand. I come to respect that, to keep her right in general. But one of the things though he did talk about, church hurt, why people don't come back. Sometimes in the article that we read, the writer, I think the pastor was saying that, sometimes we try to come up with other excuses, right? The decaying of cultural society, and people not coming back, young people not coming back to church, and it's because it may be a lack of evangelism, lack of youth program, and being seeker sensitive. Now he said, these are important, right? But these are just symptoms, right? So there's a deeper reason to why people are not coming.
You forgot about another reason why people give reasons why they don't attend church is childcare. Come on, that's serious. I say it a million times. I can't pay attention half the time in church because I'm worried about what my little one's doing. Okay, I'm trying to go and resolve in my head if I'm going to her and watch Netflix and eat these chips.
Right.
So get her taken care of, and then minister to me. Right.
Tom Brennan in his book talked about church etiquette. He emphasized the importance that we have these infrastructure, a church, that when we have visitors come, there's childcare that is provided. I remember when I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I used to go to a church, and I tell you, the childcare ministry was awesome.
Chef's kiss.
It was awesome. Not the church that you was going, but the first church I went to. Then I met you to go to. That was pretty good. Having that, but we church etiquette is very important, because, as I said, how you treat people. I met this guy at the funeral, and he was saying to me, the gentleman who passed away, he said, man. He said, I traveled from Georgia to come to his funeral. I said, why? He said, man, this brother is really a good man.
Yeah.
And he said, when you have good friends, you need to invest in them.
Right.
And I said, wow, that is so true. That is so true.
Really, church etiquette, that's just building relationships.
Not a building relationship. But I'm just saying that. But the other thing though, we know that COVID happened, and it's kind of do a lot of setback. And we try to still fine tune a little bit how to get back to that, because having childcare is very important and if you want to build a church.
Childcare, and I think I don't know if you mentioned youth programs.
Youth programs
are very pivotal. But let's jump into a few statistics, if I may, before we add a little bit more to what you were saying.
Before we go into the statistic, though, it's important to point out when we emphasize that. But when you say those are those symptoms, but there's a deeper issue. One of the deeper issues, because he mentioned, is that people are not feeling connected. They feel like the pastor is not connected to them. They are not addressing to the issue.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come to the church, the sermon is boring. It's not interested. They're not being challenged. So and they feel like the pastor just want their money. They don't care about my feeling, my pain, my problem going through.
Yeah.
So as pastors, speaking to myself,
I was gonna say
we have to we have to really connect to people. People. One of the things, as I said, you build relationship with people and you build trust. Trust, you have to earn trust from the people. So that take a while, right? But when you are connecting to the people emotionally,
how do you do that?
And through the word, to the preaching, to the teaching, and also spending time, get to know the person.
Right.
All of that. But the point is that if they feel as if they're not being connected and that their issues not being addressed, then they're not going to come back to the church.
Yeah, it's like Yeah.
You got something? What do you want to say?
No, I was just. Let me get to these stats.
I can go to the stats.
Let me get to these stats.
Go to the stats.
And then we'll kind of
unpack
visit my thoughts.
Okay.
Put some handlebars on that topic. That's a new word, a new phrase I learned the other day. 50% of Americans have no church home. 50%, according to churchleadership.org. Every year, about 2.7 million members fall into inactivity.
2.7.
They no longer are part of auxiliaries, church committees, and different things like that. They're just normal church goers, which is fine. But they fall in inactivity, or they don't frequent as much.
Wow.
According to 2020, we lost about 4,500 churches closed. About 2020.
Yes.
And as we're slowly really building up, there's been only 1,000 to 3,000 churches opening up. So there's obviously a deficit. I was watching a TV show my niece told me about, Where We Call Home, and it's when people take unique buildings and they create houses out of them.
Oh man!
And I saw at least 3 or 4 episodes that were churches were repurposed into homes. It was a synagogue, a Methodist church, a Baptist church, and an old dilapidated church. And they were all repurposed to be living houses.
Do you remember in Louisville, Kentucky, where you should leave at? They turn a church into a restaurant.
Oh my God!
Yes.
We left. Yep, it's a Mexican restaurant.
A Mexican restaurant, yeah. Wow.
Cute little church. Had a little red door and everything.
It's very nice. And it's in a well community, a very suburban community.
Half of all the churches in the USA do not add any new members, or have not added any new members to their role in the last 2 years. So what are we doing? Church members are declining. People are complaining about the lack of functioning ministries in churches. You got church hurt.
And then people still traumatized by the COVID.
Traumatized. Right. People aren't getting church a chance, is what I'm going to say.
But I believe there's not a reason to that, but this is not the platform for that. Well,
no. What I found is a modern church has become now more so an instrument of pain and disillusionment rather than a place members go to find solace.
Mm-hmm.
They're running away from it. A place where you used to go for healing, now people find to be re-triggering and having post-traumatic stress, right? So here's a question: who experiences church hurt? Who experiences it? Who was involved? Who can commit it?
I've been in church hurt.
Anybody can experience church hurt.
Anybody can experience
church members
it, right.
experience church hurt.
Emphasize it.
It can be your pastor. It can be just a church leader. It doesn't have to necessarily be the lead pastor. And also, members can also impact other members.
No, that too.
Around the organization.
And it can be guess who.
Spiritual leaders.
Right. Guess who come in. Another guest can hurt other guests.
Right.
So it's a multiple areas that can cause church hurt.
Right.
But the other thing about it, why are you laughing?
I just said that. It's like we press record and rewind. I said, I wear the same shirt. You got the same shirt.
I just like to reemphasize.
It's like looking.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You can do your hand like my hand.
Hey. Yeah. But anyway.
They're like little mimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a habit just to...
We've been married too long.
To repeat some stuff, but that's just me. And my wife knows me well.
It drives me crazy.
And it drives her crazy, but that's just me. That's the way. But...
Well, let me see. When people leave the church, what happens? What is the result of that? They leave feeling hurt. They leave because... they have either been victims of some kind of abuse, right? They are disillusioned,
Right.
and even they have a strong sense of neglect.
Right. Exactly.
And that's really hard, to think about. So we have to think about what leads to these symptoms. How do people fall into, and I don't want to say traps of church hurt, but how they fall into these scenarios where their life is set up in such a way that this happens, right?
But there's another part of it too.
What is it?
I'm saying this because
You're going like this and you're teasing us, and I want to know what
okay,
you
I'm not
say.
teasing it. Okay, but yes, people are hurt. There's no doubt about it. Right. People are damaged by other people in the church. But when they do come to church, though, here's the thing about it. You have to give God a chance, an opportunity to receive the help that you need.
Like we talked about earlier in the car. Okay, I'm hurt. How do I express it? How do I even get to that point? If I've been hurt by someone in the church, I feel like your connection is severed because you're thinking that person is already tethered to God. But then it's like,
well,
okay,
that is true. That is
so
true.
So I give it to God when God allowed that to happen. That's the first thing I'm thinking about.
Wow, that's like
it's like
you think that God will know it will happen. God allow someone in the church to hurt your feeling.
That's what I assume.
That's how people assume it. Right.
So how can I give it to God if God gave it to me?
Well, that's you see, I don't think God gave it to you.
I'm not.
But here's my thing.
People think.
Right. That's what they think.
Right. They don't understand.
You're absolutely right.
Rewind the tape.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Christian immaturity.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But part of why people leave again and he emphasized is because there's no connection. The pastor's not really addressing their hurt, their pain.
Yeah. And it gets harder.
And it gets harder.
It doesn't even know you're hurt. It gets harder when the pastor, because depending on the size of your church, the pastor's the last person to hear about anything that happens, especially with his members, unless it's something really major, or if it's something that is going to directly affect or influence him. So he's not going to know what's happening with sisters and brother so and so in the church unless it gets brought to the church.
But here's a devastation, though. Yeah, here's a devastation. I remember.
Pastors are like,
right.
Like the pastor should take care of this. Pastors don't even know.
Right, and sometimes they know, but they didn't do anything.
Majority of the time,
they don't know. They don't know. That's true. But what do you do? Because I have a friend of mine in Kentucky. Used to go to seminary. He shared a story with me of a lady.
You can talk up a little more though.
Say it again.
Really? You can talk louder.
Okay, let me talk louder. Can you hear me from the bathroom? All right. I get loud. All right. So, but anyway, I was trying to say that, a friend of mine back in before I met my wife, and he was telling me how a young lady in the church was sexually abused by one of the deacons. And she went and told the pastor, and the pastor didn't do anything about it to rectify, to discipline the deacon.
Wow.
And so imagine that you come to church every Sunday and the deacon who sexual assault you, and you see that person in the church, that you being re-traumatized over, traumatized over and over again. And the pain this individual has to experience on a day-to-day basis.
So who needs to resolve that conflict?
That's a tough one, because if the pastor doesn't adjust it himself, then who does she go to?
And why probably would the pastor not address it?
I don't know the reason for the pastor. I don't know.
Why would he talk to the deacon to address it? Because why? Maybe because he's short on deacons. Maybe because he really likes.
No. The deacon who abused a young lady.
The pastor addressed the deacon.
Right, because I don't know. He didn't go into full detail, but he just said the pastor. Right. It could be a number of reasons why.
The thing, as I said earlier, is because conflict. Pastors, unfortunately, are the worst people to address conflict. It's like, let me help you. Let me teach you how to be better in conflict resolution. A lot of pastors are people pleasers, and so they'll do whatever the people ask them to do in order to maintain their position or to stay in favor.
But some think that because by keeping it
on discipline,
right? Some believe that by keeping it quiet, it may may keep the church from being imploded.
Having them look bad in a different light.
But years later, he's doing more injustice because when
because the church looks good, but then the body of the church is rotting within.
Because sooner or later, when this thing becomes infected, it's gonna really explode. So it's sad. It's sad, but you have those cases. Not every pastor like that, though. Not every pastor like, because there are pastors who do address the situation.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Some pastors don't know. If you don't tell the pastor, how can he knows? Right?
I mean, in the instance of our issues and why we even came up with the topic, it was because the pastor knew to an extent of some of the issues, of some of the beefs that we had, and they still went unresolved. And again, here comes the gaslighting. I know we're not crazy. We are saying that we're struggling. We are saying that we need help. We are saying that these are issues. These are bona fide issues. But yet and still, my thought was, okay, if the pastor doesn't ask a lot of questions, or if the pastor doesn't get a lot of detail, that absolves him from having to really deal with the issue.
But I remember a situation that happened in Louisville, Kentucky, at the church that we were attending, and right, you're right, you're absolutely right, okay. You're absolutely right,
so you're right. To me, then your mess. That way, I'm not. In a lot of it,
as you commence by saying that there are some ministers who just don't know how to do conflict resolution, right? We're not saying every pastor is going to know how to do conflict resolution, right?
And I'm saying if you work in a place where you are in the business of working with people and you don't know how to handle conflict, you don't need to be in that position. Because working with people is nothing but conflict resolution. If you don't know how to address issues and make it plain and manage people and be a leader, what you doing?
I never said this here, Yeah, because I know back in Louisville, Kentucky, there was 2 ministers who came against me and trying to do something undermine the ministry that was given to me. And when I spoke with the lead pastor about the situation, he told me that the other minister didn't want to talk about it. And walk away felt as if that that the minister didn't come to him to talk with him.
So it didn't happen.
So it didn't happen.
So he's not getting additional information.
Right, he's not getting additional. The other minister was trying to avoid not face up to what he have done. Right. But the thing about it that, you know me, I like to approach it and talk about it head on. Right. But I take caution. I pray first.
With me. Sometimes when there's like bigger conflicts,
bigger conflict,
you don't really address them all the time.
No, sometimes you have to use wisdom. Yes, you have to use.
And you're like, maybe not. So is it just selective?
No, it's not selective.
On what?
It's just using wisdom, right?
Thoughts.
I mean, even when you know that the situation is require attention.
Yeah.
But if you approach it in the wrong way, it can get out of control.
You better go and jump on that, and then they're just like, it's not the time.
It's not the time. It's not the time.
Not worth fighting at this particular point.
Right.
Which I respect, but okay. Go ahead.
All right. So what else are we going to talk about?
What's we got on here?
Then we'll talk about healing. Talk about some steps. What you got?
The why. So
why?
How does this really impact? And that's what I wanted to unpack. How does the topic of church hurt really impact our community? And I say that as the Black community, the Caribbean, the Black, the whatever you fall under in that area. Because I was thinking to myself, as I was looking at statistics from Pew Research, only 64% of people since 2020 identify as Christian. And 30% are religiously unaffiliated. There's the agnostics and the atheists and the other religions, and people are really falling away. And so I'm thinking, how does this impact our community when the root of Black faith was the church?
If you go back to historically, the church was the pillar of the Black community.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's just like, take it or leave it. I'm thinking about just this subject this week about Tyree Nichols and everything that I'm not watching the video.
Yeah.
As
No, I didn't watch the video. I saw a glimpse of it. But listen, I'm not talking about it. I'm just saying.
The thing is,
I saw a glimpse of it and I turned it off.
How do we, as a peoples, look at this tragedy and take this to our churches and have conversations about it? It's almost like,
but one of the reasons, though,
we don't even discuss these things in church when it impacts us.
Yes, but that's one of the myths, though, that
and a lot of youth aren't coming to church because they're like, you're not talking about the social issues. You're not talking about what we want to talk about. You're not telling us how we can address these. How does the Spirit, how does God come into our lives when we're looking at this every day? All right.
How does this
impact our culture? How does this impact our culture? Not to even get deep into that.
Right.
But how does this impact our community?
That's a whole conversation by itself. But I would say, well, I'm not even going to touch that out. But one of the myths about when it comes to the black community and the black church is that you've heard it in counseling that you don't tell what happened in the family. Right, you don't spill the beans, so to speak, right? So when people,
it's just like why black people don't believe in therapy,
right?
That's a lie.
Right, it's a lot. But the more that you see black psychologists now, that's the truth. That was a myth, but more they see more black folks as psychologists coming out now. But anyway, the point is that we need to get away from that lie. So when we go into pain, we don't want to talk about it. So now the church become
so hush hush.
So hush hush that.
Mistrust.
They're not
talking about it.
They're not talking about it.
They don't want to be judged by their peers.
That's it. They don't want to be judged.
I to be crazy.
I'll be gossip about.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things.
Which leads to church hurt.
Church hurt.
So all roads lead to mistrust.
That's right. I like what Henry Blackaby said.
What Blackaby said?
Henry Blackaby said that when God gives you insight into someone's situation, life, their pain, he said, this is not the time for you to gossip about. It is the time for you to begin to pray for that person, intercede for that person, and ask God how to lead you, how to address that individual. And it's interesting she said that. I have this book that I've read quite some time of a young lady who have been hurt and been raped in the church by someone in the church. And it's unfortunate that she doesn't see the church as a place
of solace,
right. A place to worship, and she see the place as a place of abuse.
Yeah.
And you probably said this before when this person said, "I love you." Now, when she interprets that "I love you," it's like it is an introduction for that individual to come and molest her and take advantage of her, right? So the key is that when God gives us insight into someone's situation, this is not the time for me to pick up the phone, call X, Y, and Z and say, you know what happened, da da da. No, because if we do that, that's proliferate the pain and the anguish, right?
Definitely.
And we need to address that. We need to address, because people who are hurt need to their trust need to be restored back. And the more we get into that, we're going to talk about how we do that, the process.
So let's just look at our final point. How are we going to talk about healing from this?
Well, now I'm going to give like three thoughts there, right?
Okay.
You can recognize the injustice, the pain, and the rejection, the bullying, etc., and validate your emotion by acknowledging it. This is by Jill Monaco Ministry.
Okay.
And she's, you gotta realize, because one of the things she said that we are taught to forgive the person, but we are not taught how to address our pain, to acknowledge it. It is real, right? We say, I forgive the person, but we don't really address the pain that we're going through.
Well, healing is a process.
It's a process.
That you can forgive someone, but you can still be hurt, and it takes a while.
It takes a while. It's same thing with the story, right?
So let that go.
You gotta let that go. It's same thing with Job and Esau.
Okay.
Esau forgave Job for treating him on this birthright, and he forgave Job. But when you read the book of Hebrew, the writer says something different, and that is, the writer said that Esau could not find a place in his heart to forgive himself. So you have to address the pain that you go through. Number two, release the gift of forgiveness towards the offender. Release the gift of forgiveness towards the offender.
You really did 1 and 2 together.
Yeah.
All right.
Number three, the final one is that receive restoration from God, and that is important. That you learn how to receive restoration from God. You need to differentiate between God's love, agape love, and the love that people say that they express to you, which can lead into many areas of hurt. So as we go into and delve into it more, we're going to touch on a little bit, and that's why we say we're not going to rush through this. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to share our experience, and we're going to talk about how does God help us in our journey and bring us to a place where we can receive restoration. And restoration does not mean that it happens overnight. It can be a process of healing, meaning that you are willing to take the necessary step. As the old adage said that times heal, that's not true. Time does not heal.
Oh, time heals old wounds?
Old wounds, right. Something like that, right?
Time heals. No, it don't.
No, it doesn't.
You still be mad as time passes.
Right.
I can attest to that. Not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. But time.
But why should we
heal?
Time heal, right.
That's what it is.
So why do you think that we should involve ourselves in the process of sharing our pain and our own church hurts? And
it reminds me of the book that we were reading when we were going through our Suffering for a Purpose series. And the goal is everybody's going to have issues, right? I was talking to a gentleman this afternoon for church, and he was like, well, things ain't going too well. I was like, well, you're doing better than most, right? And you can complain. Everybody doesn't want to hear it, but that's your right, to complain. But in that aspect, I still said, just let God take care of it, and if you try to control everything and plan everything, you're going to miss the journey. And you're going to miss what God is trying to tell you in the middle of all of that. And then you won't be able to go back and help other people. I am not excited about everything that I've went through in the last 9 years living here. I mean...
But what have you learned from it?
But let me tell you, you can't tell me nothing about my struggle and what I've learned, what I've overcame, how I am still healing, the fact that I have recognized that I have been dragged, but I have been able to fall, roll around in the mud, but then I got back up. And the point is, I can share that story, and even more so, I can relate to somebody else. And so your suffering is designed for a purpose. Your struggle is on purpose, because you can't help other people going through something if you've never been through it.
I like what one.
I really think it's imperative for pastors or people in ministry, or just even friends. I can't help you go through something if I've never been through it.
Right.
It's imperative, and it's those struggles. You know what I'm saying? It's those
struggles.
I was saying to someone else, the passing of my mom, that sucked so much. But when someone else's mother and brother and sister passed in the church, I was able to with ease say, I know how that feels. I have empathy for you. I'm going to hug you like I wanted someone to hug me, because I understand how that grief and that loss feels and what that looks like. Yeah. If I hadn't, I would have just shrugged it off and be like, I'm praying for you. You're going to be good, sis. It's through those struggles, I think. And so you have to put yourself in the process, because your suffering should be shared.
Right. And that's what I'm about to say. Bill Hemmer, I believe his name is, wrote a book called God Does Not Waste His Sorrow.
Child.
God does not. Every experience that you and I go through, as traumatic it may be, God take notice of every pain.
Yeah.
And He use it and He mold us to be the person that when we encounter people going, we can sympathize.
Yeah.
We know what the person, because we've been through it, we've been there, we have overcome it.
Yeah.
So God doesn't waste his sorrow.
And if you didn't learn
And he
it,
uses for his glory.
he gonna keep you going through it until
Right.
you figure it out. Because that's where I was at. He kept sending it, and I wasn't getting it.
My God. And let me tell you, I see it firsthand.
He kept like, okay, you didn't get that lesson. Boom.
Yeah.
Another tragedy. All right. Oh, Frankie, you didn't figure it out yet.
Oh man. Yeah.
I'm gonna smite you there. Boom. All right, you ain't getting this. And I'm like, yo.
And we were going like this.
And I'm like, you tripping.
But
tripping.
Through it all, it taught me something as well, that I must not ace what God is doing in your life, not interfere with it, because if I have done that,
I mean,
you would not be the person that you are today. Say that again.
You did, but you learn how to kind of.
What I just said.
Put your hands off.
I said
Tesla.
I did not know. It's you, John.
Take the wheel.
Yeah, you also Jesus take the wheel.
I think that was Jay-Z.
But if Jesus take the wheel, then guess what?
That's Advil. Jesus take the wheel.
The Bible said, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things that I say?" So if Jesus take the wheel, it means that you have submit to the lordship of Jesus. So you can't be complaining and whining where he takes you.
I ain't complaining. I was telling someone.
I'm not talking about you.
Oh. They was like, girl, they said, Sister Frankie, you just look so joyful lately, and you're just so full of energy, and I don't know where this came from.
From me, of course.
And I said,
praise God.
Yes. I said, you know what? Because I've been in the darkest places where I could ever be.
That is true. That is true. All joke aside,
I don't want to go back there again.
I give God glory for it. No, it had nothing to do with me.
And I don't want to go back there again. And I want my joy back. And
I can brag about this woman.
I have found it. Don't brag about me.
I brag about you because I thank God for you, baby.
I want to thank God for you, baby.
I got to thank God for you.
Baby.
And that's the key. One of the key is that you have someone there who can support you as you go through it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get a look deeper.
So next week we're going to start phase 1. We're talking about the
trauma.
Are we going backwards? Yeah, we are.
We're going backwards.
Trauma. It's help unpack recognizable trauma, hurt. But we're going to do.
What are the traumas?
We're talking about the T.
The T.
Trauma.
We
started the trauma. Then we're going to do recognizing it. Then we're going to unpack it. And then we're going to end the series with the helping.
With the healing.
Between and the healing.
Yes. Right?
So we're going
trauma. What does that look like? Let me tell you.
I know. Here.
Man.
This face. Look up Google under trauma. And my face is right there.
Right.
Looking like this.
But when we start to talk about that and we can recognize the trauma, it can help a lot of us how to engage the conversation with the person rather than going in it ignorantly. Can I just say this before we end?
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
All right, pal.
Yeah, Tim Bowman, who started off this generational counseling, the African. But anyway, he focused on schizophrenia. And one day he treated his patient, and they were recovering. But every time that the parents of the client would come in to see the client and they leave, the patient would get worse and worse.
Right.
And he said to himself, "Why is that every time the patient is reaching a progression where he or she is getting better, that it started to regress back?"
Yeah.
Well, he found out that a lot of the things that the parents were doing unaware was triggering,
pulling them back.
So what he did to help to bring healing to his client, he began to teach the parents about the symptoms and the sign and what can trigger. And through that, when the parents were trained and know it, they came alongside and helped bring healing as well.
Okay.
Did you miss something? What did you miss?
I was going to say, I don't know. What was the?
The point is that when you are trained and you know the information,
okay,
and then you begin to walk alongside the person, and you
Okay.
begin to bring healing with the
Right.
person.
All I
You
could
come
hear was
alongside.
Tyrese singing in my ear.
Forget about Tyrus in your ear.
Not like I'm done.
What is Tyrus was in your ear about?
Because you were saying re-triggering the trauma, and it made me think of a Tyrese and Chingy's. Every time I try to leave, someone keeps pulling me back. And I was thinking yeah, it's Chingy. They're pulling you back, re-traumatizing you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Tyrese.
Tyrese's a hot mess. He ain't got nothing else in my.
But that's why you need to get him out of your head.
While I was singing the song, pulling me back.
He put you back with something. All right. You're gonna leave that one right there.
We were supposed to be months ago.
But anyway, my point of saying that was that once we know what the traumas are, then we can go alongside that individual.
Education.
Right. And then you become part of the healing, not part of the problem.
There we go.
Right. All right. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
For joining us tonight.
Thank you guys.
We love you. We appreciate you. And please, if you have any questions,
if you have anything to share,
just DM
or not,
DM. What do you call it?
DM
us. DM us with the question on the Church Folks Be Talking. Listen, guys.
Check us out. Subscribe.
Check us out.
Where can we be?
Also, right.
On what platforms?
iHeartRadio.
Boom.
Apple Podcasts.
Yup.
YouTube.
Bop.
Spotify.
Wop.
Bang. That's it. What else do we know?
I think so.
If you can go Cashbox, download that.
That's that.
Putting Church Folks in, pop right up.
There he is.
All right.
All right.
But God bless you.
So have a good night.
Have a good night. Love you.